Inflation isn't just a statistic buried in an economic report. It's a silent force reshaping the lives of millions of Americans. And nowhere is that more evident than in the future of Social Security. For decades, Social Security has stood as a promise, a safeguard ensuring that after a lifetime of work, people could retire with dignity and security. But that promise is now under siege. Inflation, while sometimes offering retirees a temporary boost, is threatening to destabilize one of the most critical programs in American history. And the longer policymakers delay action, the closer we edge toward a future where this lifeline may no longer deliver what it once promised. When inflation spikes, Social Security beneficiaries see adjustments to their monthly checks. This is done through cost of living adjustments, or COLAs, which are tied to a specific measure of inflation called the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers, or CPIW. Each year, officials measure inflation during the months of July, August, and September, and those figures determine how much benefits will rise the following year. In theory, this system ensures that retirees' checks rise to match the cost of goods and services, protecting their purchasing power. But the reality is far more complicated and often much harsher. Recent history paints a vivid picture. In 2021, inflation averaged around 7%, yet the COLA increase for 2022 was only 5.9%, leaving retirees falling behind. By 2022, inflation reached a staggering 8%, and that year's COLA surged to 8.7% for 2023, the largest jump in more than 4 decades. Retirees saw their checks climb, and for many, that felt like long overdue relief. But relief is not the same as security. Even with that 8.7% bump, prices for food, housing, gas, and utilities had risen so sharply that most people still felt the pinch. COLA doesn't restore lost ground. It merely attempts to keep pace with inflation. And for those living on fixed incomes, keeping pace can feel a lot like running in place while prices continue to climb. Yet that is only one side of the story. Inflation doesn't just hit households. It also threatens the very survival of Social Security's trust funds, the reserves that keep the system afloat when payroll tax revenue falls short. Social Security isn't funded by magic. It's a pay-as-you-go system, meaning today's workers pay payroll taxes into the system, and those dollars go straight out to retirees. The trust funds act as a backup, bridging the gap when tax revenue isn't enough. But here's the danger. When inflation drives up benefits through high COLAs while wage growth lags behind, the system is paying out far more than it's taking in. That forces the program to dip into those trust funds more aggressively, draining them faster than anticipated. Consider this scenario. Inflation surges to 8%, but average wage growth barely hits 4%. The gap between what's being paid out in benefits and what's coming in from payroll taxes widens dramatically. Add high unemployment to the mix, and you have even fewer workers paying into the system. Suddenly, Social Security is hemorrhaging money at a pace far beyond projections. Right now, experts warn that without reform, the trust funds will be depleted by 2033. But if this economic imbalance continues, that cliff could come even sooner. And when that day comes, automatic benefit cuts of around 23% will slam into retirees, slashing incomes for tens of millions of Americans. For many households, that's the difference between paying rent and facing eviction, between affording medication and going without. The consequences would ripple through every community in the country. Inflation's reach doesn't stop there. Rising prices also mean higher healthcare costs, and Medicare premiums climb in response. Medicare, Part B, which is deducted directly from Social Security checks, has been steadily rising year after year, and periods of high inflation accelerate those increases. A retiree celebrating an 8.7% COLA boost quickly finds that higher Medicare costs eat away a significant chunk of that raise. That's the cruel irony of inflation. The more it spikes, the more your benefits appear to grow. But much of that increase vanishes as premiums and essential expenses soar. The system is designed to help retirees tread water, but with every inflation wave, the water level rises higher. Yet even in this bleak cycle, there's a brief window where retirees can get ahead, if the timing is right. COLA increases are permanent. They're not rolled back when inflation falls. So if one year sees a dramatic spike, like 8.7%, and the following year inflation drops back to 2%, retirees keep that higher check. In this rare situation, some see a real gain in purchasing power, at least temporarily. That's what we've witnessed in recent years. After COLAs soared to 5.9% and then 8.7%, inflation cooled, at least according to official metrics. On paper, retirees are finally a step ahead. But go to any grocery store or gas station and you'll hear a different story. Prices haven't truly dropped. They've just stopped rising as fast. Inflation may be easing in the reports, but the damage it caused is permanent. This constant push and pull highlights how fragile the entire Social Security system has become. Lawmakers face a daunting choice: raise taxes, cut benefits, push back retirement age, or some combination of all three. None of these solutions are politically popular, but doing nothing is not an option. With the trust funds on track to run dry within a decade, every year of inaction brings retirees closer to a devastating financial shock. And while politicians debate, inflation continues to quietly erode the safety net millions depend on. For future retirees, those just 10 or 15 years away from claiming benefits, the uncertainty is even more daunting. If drastic reforms aren't enacted soon, they could retire into a system that no longer provides enough to cover even basic expenses. For those already retired, this threat looms like a storm on the horizon. Every COLA increase feels good in the moment, but it also signals a deeper problem beneath the surface. And yet, there is a path forward. A strong economy with consistent wage growth and lower inflation could stabilize Social Security, buying time to shore up the trust funds and avoid catastrophic cuts. But as long as inflation remains unpredictable and the system continues to pay out more than it takes in, Social Security's long-term health remains in jeopardy. Americans cannot afford to ignore this issue, because the clock is ticking, and once the trust funds are depleted, the changes will be immediate and severe. This isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about the lives of millions who depend on this program to survive. Inflation may bring temporary relief, but it also exposes how vulnerable the system really is. Every rise in prices chips away at purchasing power, and every boost in benefits brings us closer to a financial reckoning. The program meant to protect Americans in their most vulnerable years now faces one of the most urgent crises in its history. If this breakdown gave you clarity, subscribe to stay ahead of the stories shaping your future. Like this video if you value the truth, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters in this conversation, because the fight for Social Security's survival impacts us all. But here's the question that demands an answer. If this lifeline collapses sooner than expected, what or who will step in to fill the void?